President Trump will be hosting French President Macron at the White House today with the Ukraine war one of their key topics. Today, marking 3 years since the start of that war. And President Zelenskyy telling a forum in Kyiv, quote, "If to achieve peace you really need me to give up my post, I'm ready. I can trade it for NATO membership if there are such conditions." Former CIA station chief and Fox News contributor Dan Hoffman joins me now. Dan, let's jump off there on what Zelenskyy said. How should we interpret a comment like that?
I don't know how serious he really was about that. Ukraine has a long way to go before there's a political transition. They're still fighting a barbaric war to defend their independence against Russia. And just like Churchill during World War II, who couldn't hold elections during the war against Nazi Germany, Zelenskyy is holding on elections right now, and in my view, at least, rightly so. After the war is over, after we have a ceasefire and you could actually have elections, the Ukrainian people may speak up and decide they want someone else. Zelenskyy was a democratically elected president of the country. And just like in the UK, who turned to Labour after the Second World War, the Ukrainians may decide that they want a different leader to take them into the post-war reconstruction phase.
Looking ahead to today, the meeting between Trump and Macron, it seems like every day or every week we have a bunch of new meetings and we don't get anywhere. Will today's meeting between these two leaders get us any closer to an end of the war in Ukraine?
Well, I think this is a critical meeting. And again, when you look at the post-war plan for Ukraine, Europe has got to play the critical role there, both on defense for Ukraine, which is right now standing there at the gates, at the point of attack, defending against potential Russian incursion into Eastern Europe. Remember, Putin spent his formative years in the KGB. And back in those days, the Soviet Union imposed a sphere of influence on Eastern Europe, which Putin would like to do to Ukraine and other nations if he could. Europe needs to play a role militarily to help deter Russia, and I'm sure those discussions will be taking place today about the role that Europe can play.
And it seems like, to an extent, if you heard Secretary Hegseth's comments over the weekend with Shannon Bream on Fox News Sunday, it seems like Europe gets that somewhat. Now they need to put their money where their mouth is and see how far they take it, because at the end of the day, geographically, you don't need to be a scholar to notice that Europe is very close to the situation. They should be the ones taking the mantle. Meantime, the Trump administration proposing that Ukraine gives the U.S. hundreds of billions of dollars worth of profits from Ukraine's rare earth minerals as compensation for the wartime assistance. Here's Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent with the details.
This deal is part of President Trump's long arc negotiating strategy for peace between Ukraine and Russia that involves strategic minerals, energy, and state-owned enterprises, an implicit guarantee that if the United States of America is heavily invested in the economic future, I call it an economic security guarantee.
There's something crucial in what he said there, because we all get, I think, distracted by the fact, we can have these minerals, we can use them for our phones and the like, and we can get our money back. But it's the security aspect to it. Knowing Russia like you do, will an American presence in Ukraine vis-a-vis these minerals, what it takes to mine them, process them, and the like, will that deter Putin from invading Ukraine again?
Well, I think if I were looking at this through the eyes of Ukraine's leadership, and if I were advising them, I would say your number one goal should be for the United States to have skin in the game in Ukraine. Economically, and that's what this deal would do. Now, there's a lot of details to be worked out in this agreement, and I'm sure that both sides will come to some sort of an agreement together, but at the heart of it, I think it's that. If the United States and Ukraine are linked up economically, that's good for Ukraine, it's good for the United States, and for Europe as well.
Meantime, Russia says preparations for a Trump-Putin summit are underway. Is Putin waiting for this meeting, Dan, before he takes any step toward an ultimate ceasefire or a truce, sort of as validation of himself on the world stage?
Absolutely. Vladimir Putin wants the world to perceive him as being able to go toe-to-toe with the United States, the global superpower that we are. Russia's GDP is the size of Italy's. And Putin wants to have that ability to show not just his own followers, but the global South and the Middle East as well, that he can go and have these negotiations with the United States. He wants to solve problems with the United States, in his view. What I would caution the United States leadership and the Trump administration is Putin is a KGB operative. The casualties he's suffered, he's caused hundreds of thousands of Russian casualties. That's a statistic to him. His goal is still to destroy Ukraine, install a Kremlin puppet regime. And if, as abhorrent as it might be to us, the destruction that Russia has caused in Ukraine and the casualties and loss of life, again, that's a secondary importance or tertiary importance to Vladimir Putin. And I think the director of the CIA, John Ratcliffe, and his team need to play a critical role for President Trump just to provide the latest intelligence we have on Putin's plans and intentions, how he views the United States, how he views Ukraine and Europe, so that the Trump team can be as informed as possible when they're making these important decisions.
It's such an important point. It's not just the State Department at play. Ratcliffe and the entire CIA needs to be on board as well. Daniel Hoffman, we appreciate it as always. Thank you, sir.